What's going on, guys? Eric Swanick here. I am joined by Bill Underwood,
Well, here we
scout for the Kitchener Rangers in the OHL. We had some technical difficulties, so sorry we're late, but we're here. All is good, and we're excited for this one. What's going on, Bill?
not too much, just the usual, typical. Well, there's no such thing as an off season anymore, so.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? So, yeah, guys, we're gonna start this off the same way we start off everyone. Welcoming the new people. If you're new, drop a comment. Let us know where you're new from. If you're not new, let us know where you're not new from. If you are new, again, welcome. This whole thing is completely interactive. Feel free to ask your questions, post your comments, join the conversation. You can, comment on YouTube, on Facebook, or you can comment in the Discord, the Swan Hockey Discord server. Yeah, again, completely interactive. Swan Hockey's got a lot of really cool things in the works, and we're at episode 10 now of this podcast. So we're 10 episodes in now. It's flown by, and I think this is going to be a really cool one. We're talking about junior hockey, kind of like a year in review, some of the different things that went on this year. Randall from Colorado, what's going on, Randall? Talking about some of the different things that have gone on in junior hockey this year, and some of the things that are developing, some of the things still going on, and it's interesting times we're in now. So, so we're going to talk about it tonight, and I think we're going to start with what might be. We're going to jump right into this. What might be the biggest news of all is the possibility of major junior players being able to play in the NCAA. And, I'm happy Bill is here, with us tonight to talk about this. Bill, like I said, he's the scout for the Kitchener Rangers in the Ontario Hockey League. And Bill, how many years have you been with Kitchener now?
Oh, I've been there now. Geez, I've been here since 2010, so it's been quite a while. So
yeah, awesome. All right, yeah. So let's dive into it. So, where do you want to start? You want to start with, what this could mean for the game, where things are at with this. It's a very exciting topic that I think could really, really disrupt, the hockey world.
Well, where we're at is really, it's an NCAA's court, and eventually it probably is going to happen. Why? Because for one thing, there'll be legal issues that come into play. Because now you have not only the whole thing about nil, but now you have that recent settlement about players being actually able to be paid with players getting past disbursement payments. And now professionalism is there de facto in college sports. How much is going to impact hockey? Not nearly as much as basketball and football, where obviously most of the money is going to go. Those are the people that get the big money, and they're the big money sports. However, nonetheless, the NCAA eventually is going to have a legal situation of, well, players are accepting payment, and there is payment that is happening now somewhat more direct. And so at some point it'll be a legal issue, and everybody thinks in probably 2 to 3 years. It's not going to happen this year, maybe 1, 2, or 3 years from now. It's almost inevitable that barriers are going to come down. You never say absolutely 100% in anything, but certainly you'd say there's a very good chance of it.
Yeah, and let's backtrack here for a little bit for anybody on here that might not know exactly what we're talking about. So we're talking about the 3 major junior leagues: the OHL, the QMJHL, and the WHL. So that's the Ontario Hockey League, the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League, and the Western Hockey League. Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League was formerly known as the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. So we're talking about those 3 leagues. Those 3 junior leagues, they're junior leagues for, same thing as, the other leagues that you might be more familiar with, 16 to 20 years old, but they pay their players to play. And that's, part of the reason why they're ineligible. It goes deeper than that, right, Bill? Like where, the other concern from the NCAA's end is that there's guys on National Hockey League contracts playing in the major junior leagues. There's some, so it's a little bit deeper than just straight up they're paying their players to play. But Bill, what's the average? Like, what are those guys making? Would you say? Like, what's the league minimum? It's Very, very little.
What it's really basically more of a league. It's not really a league minimum. Pretty much what you're supposed to make is you get about $75 Canadian a week expense money, and of course you have your room and board and expenses paid for. And
Right.
but there's not a great deal of salary here. Now players with us always could do nil. They always could have name, image, likeness. They could have hockey cards done of them. They could have anything done of them they like. There can be sponsorship involved. You sign a contract with Reebok, and if they're going to pay you money for using you and your name or whatever, they could always do that. So there's always been payments allowed that aren't allowed at NCAA. But a huge seismic difference is exactly what you said. A player can sign a National Hockey League contract and be sent back to Major Junior. And players are technically, basically NCAA has a contamination rule. And that is if you play games that are not exhibition games with or against professionals, technically you're considered a professional yourself. Now they have all kinds of magic wands for that for certain events. Like the Olympics, you play in the Olympics, you don't lose your eligibility. However, they may wave a wand over that. They do, because obviously Olympics are not an exhibition tournament near the World Championships, which guys are allowed to play in. But they've always sort of put a wand over that. And even if guys, like when they played for the U.S. Olympic team back in the early 80s and 70s, they got $25,000 stipends. They'd actually be paid to play for the Olympic team. They'd get $25,000 or so. And they also did, play games in the old Central Hockey League that counted in the standings against those teams, the CHL professional teams. It was a top NHL farm league that CHL was, along with the AHL back then. And so there always were exceptions to the rule, but technically there is that contamination rule they've always kept in there. And if you sign an NHL contract, you're supposed to lose your eligibility and contaminate others that play with and against you. So that's a big issue. That always has been. Now that's going to be an interesting thing now in the new world of college sports, because where their greatest fear is, quite frankly, the National Football League and National Basketball Association signing guys to contracts and potentially messing with those programs. So how that's going to be handled, that's a good question now, because if you're paying players, they're technically professionals already, and technically they're already accepting money. So you're going to run into a ticklish situation, which almost, in my mind's eye anyway, sort of says we're at to start moving towards a contract system where you can say, okay, you're signed to play for Penn State or Notre Dame this year. It doesn't matter if you go to the Giants camp, you're under contract to us, and maybe, who knows, they might even someday, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's not out of the question to happen. You can actually have them come to the New York Giants and say, all right, you want our quarterback, he's under contract another year, pay us for him. Make a donation.
Buy him out of the contract.
Exactly. So you're moving into a whole new world. And again, I'm just speculating, because a world nobody really knows what it's going to be like. Nobody at all really knows what this is going to lead to. So if you talked about this 4 years ago, no one would believe it would be happening. So we come that. And so now where we'll be in 2 or 3 years, I don't think anybody can predict. But I do think they're definitely reaching a place. They're sliding towards professionalism. And, there's no question about that. And so therefore justifying keeping guys out because they're, in quotes, pros, you lose a lot of traction when your own quarterback is making $5 million a year in NCAA. And you're saying, wait a minute, we can't allow these guys in. They're making $75 Canadian a week. The argument's kind of weak.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and here's the thing that I never understood about the contamination rule, because if you have a player that, is under NHL contract, comes back, plays Major Junior, right now he's quote unquote contaminating the rest of the Major Junior League. So now those guys are deemed as professionals. But now once one of those guys gets cut and goes down to Junior A, wouldn't they technically now be contaminating Junior A? Like the whole hockey world would be contaminated, right? So the thing never made any sense to me. And honestly, it seemed like, not that they make this stuff up as they go, but some of the stuff, it seems to be, nobody really knows. Like I've worked with a couple players that did not have, NCAA eligibility because they, played, major junior, a couple major junior games or, major junior exhibition games. And when I was going through the process with, the NCAA schools with them, every person that I spoke with gave a different answer, right? Nobody actually knew in terms of like getting the player's eligibility back. Like it was so like it was just crazy. Like, there was no there was no consistency whatsoever. Nobody seemed to know. Nobody seemed to be able to get an answer, and everybody had a different answer as opposed to what how the player was supposed to be punished. And the thing that I found out, and this is years and years ago, but like the thing that I found out was that in terms of getting the eligibility back, the player had to commit to the school first, and then the school had a petition to the NCAA of, hey, we want this kid, he's ineligible, but we want to reinstate his his eligibility. And then to some extent, it seemed like it was up to the school to punish themselves, like say, hey, we're making them sit out for X amount of time. So I always told the schools, hey, give yourself a slap on the wrist and keep the show moving forward, like make it look good and call it a day, like,
all right.
But yeah, it just seemed like that there's just so much inconsistency and unknown in this, space to begin with.
Well, a big problem is if you ever looked at their rule book, it's like a phone book. The thing is very complex, very long, a lot of things, a lot of regulations. And the way I always understood it is they don't have a fast rule for it. The way I got it was you're going to have to sit a minimum of a year and probably one game per each game you played. But that's not an exact formula. It's an approximation formula. And it is something that, in a way, yes, has been shot off the hip because it's something that has evolved over the years. Back in the 70s, a guy could play in the OHA or the Quebec League or whatever, early 70s, and it was before it was called Major Junior, especially in 72, there were no problems with eligibility. You'll find a lot of guys who go way back and look in college hockey yearbooks, played for the Toronto Marlboros, who were a sponsored Leaf team. Those guys would play Leaf. Some guys played games for the Leafs, so they're playing for the Marlboros and those things. Yet they play at Michigan and whatnot, and no problem, no penalty. Of course, in those days, they also did sit out freshman year, typically, because that's just the rule of NCAA. But in the 70s, it started to change. One of the reasons people always felt it was changing was to try to protect American players and help American players get opportunities, which frankly they don't need anymore. Americans can compete fine. But it started to evolve back then. And then you start to see there was the Adam Oates rule that came up. Actually, they banned major juniors. Like when I went to college in 1978, you did have to sign a paper saying you never played major junior hockey. You had to sign a waiver stating it. However, turns out Adam Oates did play some major junior games. I guess they were exhibitions. They didn't play very many. And when he got to RPI, it's like, oops, somehow we missed this. This guy played major junior games. So they had to come up with some backtrack rule to say, what are we to do? Oh my God, if a guy's played a few games, what are we going to do? So they started coming up with this whole ruling about how you might get eligibility back. Now, Adam never had to do that. He got away scot-free, the way I recall. But after that, they come up with this rule that was sort of, okay, well, this is how we'll handle it in the future. But it's never been a hard and fast rule that's really been all that clear. And the NCAA, in a way, you have to feel sorry for them in this respect. They have so many sports they govern, all right? And any choice they make in any one sport could potentially have some roll off into other sports legally. And so they have sports that go all the way from completely non-revenue sports like badminton and that sort of thing. Sorry, badminton fans, but it's not the same as major college football. And so you run the gamut between the two, and you try and run these sports that are, very amateur, and you want to keep it that way. And there could be some monkey business with, versus sports that have really, if you really, let's be honest about it, about college basketball and college football big time. They've been professional sports for a long time. College football has been somewhat of a professional sport for 100 years. There has been rampant cheating, rampant stuff going on for 100 years now. They just never acknowledged it. Now, suddenly, we're in a different era. Players are empowered. We have an era where the media can dig in and find out about all the dirty little booster club stuff and everything. And now you look at it in all honesty, what is driving this whole thing with Bill and all that comes right back to football and basketball, where the real money is. And if they're going to do that for football and basketball, eventually it's going to tide its way over to hockey and other, in quotes, lesser sports. It's going to tide over to women's sports. It's going to tide over everything. Like, think of it this way. How much money did Caitlin Clark make this year? Female basketball player. She made an enormous amount of nil money this year. So it's already hit women's sports. She made as much money / more money than most college athletes this year at nil. So it comes back to it's starting to spread. Now, will it spread a real lot? probably not to the point where hockey's become like football, where players be paid a lot of money. Nah. Do I see $1 million hockey player in the NCAA? Absolutely not. Do I see it in football and basketball? I come back and say we've already seen it. We know that. You know that several quarterbacks, Williams this year, how much he made in nil, I don't even want to think about. He's on TV every 5 minutes on commercials, and how much he made off of his commercials, et cetera, et cetera. They're NFL quarterbacks that made less money than him this year. So, it already is here de facto, but it's something that's evolved. It's something they never had planned. So it has been a lot of shooting from the hip. So you're correct in that. They have complex rules, and a lot of it's been shooting from the hip, trying to deal with one problem after another as they come up. And a lot of them are rooted in other sports. And so that problem hits a totally different environment. They got to deal with it, and it comes back roosting home eventually with other sports. Granted, they're all governed a little bit separately, but you're still under that NCAA, head, that under that whole organizational blanket. Therefore, there's stuff that's going to come into play, and it's something that it's not. To say it's organized, there's nothing organized about it at all.
Yeah. Now let me get your opinion on this. And we got another comment. Lenore, hi Lenore, how are you doing? If this does happen, what does this do to the USHL and the North American League? Does it knock them down a few rungs?
I think the answer is yes and no. They'll lose some top talent. Absolutely. But what it will also do, it'll open opportunities up for a lot of kids that aren't getting chances there. So yes, it will. Because do I see a player? I can see a lot of elite players. I've had elite players tell me, if the NCAA would let me play, we'd sign with you in a minute. I've had guys say that to me.
Yeah.
So will they lose players, the USHL and the NAHL? Absolutely they will. But on the other side of the coin, the good news, Lenora, is, depending on where your son plays, it's going to be a lot of opportunities for a lot of hockey players now that aren't getting.
Well, no, I asked you that. Lenore was just saying hi.
Okay. Lenore said hi. Okay, well, hi, Lenore. But so like I say, yeah, it will. Will you see the same top talent go in there? Probably not. Although, of course, U.S. national, I don't see the USNDT, closing up shop. That's going to keep on going. I think I don't see that stopping. But on the other side of the coin, I don't know about you, but my general conversation with players are the biggest thing that holds them up on going to major junior is NCAA rule. If they had that opening, they'd come and play. So
absolutely. Yeah, I think. I mean, me personally, I think it's going to really hurt the North American League. I think the North American League becomes a Division III league. And I mean, look, the North American League sends a lot of guys Division III right now as it is. But I think the North American League really becomes a Division III league if this happens. And the USAHL, I think it's kind of up for debate. I think it really depends on how they're going to have to really win some recruiting battles. I don't see them out recruiting the OHL. I don't see them out recruiting the Western League. I think them against a Quebec league is going to be the interesting thing to me. I could be completely wrong, but I think for me, I think the USHL is going to, I think their ability to, I guess be number 3 in line, I think is going to be huge if they could be 3 in line instead of 4 in line.
I think what you're going to see happen is a little bit with them is they're going to end up, it depends the area. Do I see Minnesota kids going en masse to the Western League? No, I don't. I think you'll have a lot of Minnesota kids who want to stay in the United States. I think a lot of New England kids, as you say, they're not going to want to go to the Quebec League. If they had the option of going to the OHL, a lot of New England kids would, but they're going to Quebec, no. And I think a lot of them will probably go a different route than that. They don't want to play in the Quebec League in a lot of cities. Detroit kids, Chicago kids, St. Louis kids, OHL territory kids will all, I think, have another thought altogether. It'll be a very different thing here. Now out west, I think they'll get a fair amount of players, but I just don't know if the Minnesota market culturally is going to suddenly become a Western League market that everybody's going to go to WHL. I have my doubts about. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of that. That the Minnesota market would probably. I mean, the Minnesota market right now, a lot of those guys, you can't even get them to go play in the USHL. They'll stay home, play high school, and then they'll, once they graduate, then they'll go to the USHL. So they very
Exactly.
much are happy at home. So yeah, I mean, I think it. Yeah, I also think it'll depend on how many Canadians now would have an interest in NCAA, right? So I'm interested to also see how many guys from the OHL. Obviously there's probably a good amount that would be interested in playing in the NCAA if they could, but I also think that there's probably a good amount of kids that say, no, I'm still, even though I can go to NCAA, nope, I'm still not interested in going to the NCAA for whatever reason. And I think it might take a few years for that group to cycle out. So like, I'm interested to see what happens, like, 5 years down the road after this rule gets changed, if it gets changed. I think I mean, like, to me, it's really, really interesting. And I think it could be, depending on how, different markets react. I mean, it really could, I think really could reshape a lot of things. I think the BCHL could have problems. I think they'll lose guys to the Western League.
Oh, no question. And one thing that's come into play there on that is with Canadian kids. I think the thing is this: but they had to lose playing in the OHL, even if they would go NCAA. They go NCAA later still. So going to play the OHL have no impact on going to the NCAA. So why wouldn't they just go right to major junior, then go NCAA? And of course, some guys might see a money making opportunity in NCAA, nil and stuff like that. I think
Right.
certain levels of
That's
player.
a great point.
Yeah, and major junior players be different types of impact on players. Remember, the flood of major junior players going to the NCAA. Remember, there's one thing on taper it is a lot of guys are signed pro contracts. So those guys won't be coming down to the NCAA. They'll be going pro as they always do.
Right.
And you'll be seeing, and some of the American guys, of course, that normally would play at NCAA won't, so they'll go pro directly out of major junior. But then you have a lot of other guys that right now they're not getting the pro contract. Those guys will definitely look at NCAA. And as I say, in certain situations, I see some games played that I want to be drafted by game, of course, will be very valid always. Only hitch is, again, you're getting drafted at 16, so you're not going to college at 16. So yeah, so again, you're probably ending up going major junior, and then you can, if you really hate where you're playing, you make your mind up at 18 about that, 19 or 20. And remember,
Right.
the colleges are liking the 19 and 20-year-old player anyway, 20, 21-year-old player. So what we're just doing is we'll have a lot of players that are. It's going to be not unlike what's happening in junior right now. Guys are playing a 19 or 20 with us, and they'll go NCAA. Will they have the superstar player? A lot of guys they won't. Some guys they'll still probably get, because like I say, do I see Minnesota hot shots still going NCAA? Sure. Do I see a Boston hot shot still going NCAA? Of course I do. I don't see them necessarily turning it down to go major junior. But on the other hand, a Detroit kid, yeah, they're probably going to lose that kid. A top Detroit kid is probably going to be in that OHL. Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, we got a couple more comments here. Kai, I hope I'm saying that right. Kai says, hockey is the only animal where we are sending 16 to 20-year-olds to junior hockey before they even look at going to college. Kai's 100% right. It's like to me, it's kind of crazy, like where it's like, with hockey, we're like, oh, you got to be, they want older, they want stronger, got to be more mature, like, but every other sport, it's like, yeah, we'll take you out of college, out of high school, no big deal, right? Like guys are getting, so it's yeah, hockey's a whole different animal. I'm not really, I mean, to me, it really doesn't make much sense. The explanation that I got, and, Bill, let me know what you think, if you can, confirm this or one way or another. But the explanation that I got from somebody one day, because I asked the same question, I'm like, just kind of like, how did this start? Like, why are we doing this when, every other sport, yeah, they take them right out of high school. Guys, same thing. Guys go to major league at 18 years old, but when it comes to college hockey, it's like, nope, you got to be more mature, you got to be older. And the explanation that I got was that it started based off of the major junior system, where Canada had their major junior, and then they had their junior A underneath it, and then there was one school at the Division I level that started recruiting out of junior A back when everything was small, when there wasn't a ton of hockey. One school started recruiting out of junior A, and because of that, they were older and stronger and more mature than every other school, and they would beat up on everybody else. And then everybody else started slowly, all right, well, if they're recruiting out of there, we're going to recruit out of there. And it just slowly started becoming everybody recruited out of junior A to stay competitive. And here we are today. That's the explanation I got. I don't know if it's correct or not, but I mean,
I don't think there is any one explanation. I think it just evolved that way. I think, and remember, an interesting point a lot of people forget is in the 1960s, you were not allowed to play college hockey as a freshman. So you were de facto starting to play when you're a little bit older back then, because you had to sit out your freshman year, and that's just the way it worked. College is a college it wasn't as much a NCAA college. It was something that's run more by the academic people. Put it bluntly, it was something that wasn't as much a decision of coaches, but you had to sit out that year. So there always was that little bit later thing. And of course, in college, in hockey, we have junior hockey. Other sports don't have that same animal. And I think that another thing, like you say, that's absolutely true. I'm sure the bigger, stronger, mature player. I do think hockey. The one thing is, remember, as a sport, it's more than just athletic ability. It doesn't matter if you're 7 feet tall. It doesn't matter if you run a 4.240. It means what's meaningful here is that you understand the game and make the decisions very quickly. The processor moves fast enough. And in other sports, of course, you have to have a fast processor. But being that great athlete in other sports is far much more of a difference. You look at a lot of great hockey players. Could I say I see these guys going out and winning decathlons? Are you kidding me? No, no. On the other hand, football, you look at these guys, you look at NBA, these guys are unbelievable athletes. You say to yourself, you put these guys in the Olympics, you know something they could probably play five or six different sports. They're just amazing athletes. And here you don't necessarily have to be an amazing athlete. You have to be an amazing hockey player. And you can be the best athlete in the world, but the world's worst hockey player. In football and basketball, you're not necessarily be a great player if you're just the best athlete. But you're not going to be the worst player either. I'll guarantee you that. Because if you can run faster, jump higher, and are stronger, you have tremendous advantages. And in football, if you're the biggest, strongest, fastest, and meanest, you have a big advantage.
I hear you. I mean, see, I think that I think hockey players could play any sport. I mean, I don't know, would they excel at I guess like you're saying, like track and field? Nah, maybe not. But I think I think hockey players are pretty well rounded. But like I said, I mean, in terms of like a track and field thing, yeah, maybe, maybe not where, but
what I suggest for people on that is watch the NHL playoffs and switch over to the NBA for a little while. All right. And I remember watching Shaquille O'Neal back around 2004. I said, my God, this guy is 7 feet tall plus. And he weighs close to 300 pounds. Look at how he can jump and move. I can't say I see that in hockey players. Guys I'm saying are a physical freak. I was saying to myself, this is Superman. I had the pleasure of watching Michael Jordan play. And yeah, a man can fly. It was amazing. And I don't think I'd see that with hockey players. You watch the NFL every week. You watch the combines sometime, you see this 350-pound defensive tackle. And you look at his time in the 40 and you say, what? He's 350 pounds. He's 6'7", and he can move that fast. I just don't see.
Wow. Yeah, I've never. Yeah, I don't watch the combine for football, and yeah.
These guys are on such another level than everybody. It's just amazing. You look at how just all of those guys. In every position, quarterbacks, everything, and in basketball, everything. These guys are amazing athletes. I think hockey is more akin to baseball, where baseball is very much acquired skill sport. I remember a story once that in Philadelphia, they brought some top Philadelphia athletes in. All right, for the Phillies owner to have them take a look. Chuck Bednarik, an all-pro linebacker, he threw the baseball about 10 feet because he's too muscle bound. Tom Gola just couldn't throw, no throwing mechanics. He threw a baseball like to try to make a foul shot. All right, 9 feet tall, 9 feet wide, and 9 feet tall. Then you had little Larry Boa there, who was 15 years old. He said, "Can I throw the ball, Mr. Carpenter?" He said, "Sure, Larry." And he guns it from the outfield to home plate. He's a little kid, had really a pipe cleaner arm, but he had an arm. God gave him an arm. Similarly, you look at how pitchers, that's something that is a science. Same thing with Ted Williams being able to see the seams on a baseball. These guys, are an acquired skill. by and large, like in hockey, we are having that fast processor, having that good aerobic ability, having the toughness, mental toughness, and whatnot. But what you don't have to be is look at Wayne Gretzky. Was this guy a physical freak in any sense of the word? No. The funny story is his first year, and I hope Wayne's not listening. Kind of tell a big secret. I heard a story about when he went to the bench press. He couldn't bench press like 130 pounds, and he asked, "Does this mean my mother's stronger than me?" And that's, you look at a lot of guys in hockey. These guys just are. Could I picture them in an NFL locker room? No, they'd be laughed out of it. Same with the NBA. They just have, hell, the NBA guys just walk over them literally. So,
I think there's definitely other skills in hockey that bail a lot of these guys out.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, like in terms of like the top end talent of the NHL, I mean, I don't think anybody in the NHL wants to hear that their fourth line guy can't bench press 135. And also, I think, for some of that top end talent, but
that's the story I heard about Gretz. I don't know how true it is, but I know he's not a guy that was, he's not going to be an NFL workout warrior. Aerobics would be, his aerobics were off the chart, is aerobic ability. So, but I'm just saying that, in our sport, a lot of it is getting that mental processor fast. Doesn't matter what type of athlete you are, because that mental processor doesn't work fast. It just doesn't matter. And that comes from experience and repetition. In other sports, you can cheat a lot more. You sure, you need the processor and everything, but you can cheat a lot more. I mean, if you're like Peyton Manning, that big guy that can see over the line and everything, yeah, you've got an advantage right there, pal. Over that 5'11" quarterback, you got a huge advantage because you can see everything.
Right. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Lenore says Uncle Fester did very well with cross country and distance track while he was injured.
I loved Uncle Fester. He also could light a light bulb.
What is that?
He also could light a light bulb very well. Uncle Fester put the light bulb in his mouth. Addams Family. And
oh, really? I never got into Addams Family. never really watched it, believe it or not. But no, it's funny though. Yeah. Well, no, I think it's definitely interesting with the NCAA and with the major junior and all that. I mean, I guess, moving on here, to touch on, I guess if we go, expansion, expansion's been a big topic in junior hockey right now. North American Hockey League's been expanding. The BCHL has been expanding. The USPHL has been expanding at, the premier level. I think they expanded. Did they expand at the NCDC level too, or did they just relocate some guys?
They relocated.
They relocated, right? So okay, so yes, they had a couple, relocations or purchases or whatnot. North American Hockey League, is it getting too big?
I think honestly, all the leagues are probably a little bit too big. We've gotten to a point where there are just so many junior teams out there that, you look at some of these junior teams, there's a definite disparity. So I would say, I wouldn't just point a finger at the NA. The NA certainly is very big and certainly seems to keep on expanding. And but I can't say, only leagues that put a cap on it, really, you look at it, are Major Junior and the USHL. They both put a cap on it. And the idea is to maintain some quality and also to help your franchises gain maximum value by creating scarcity. Other leagues, right, there's sort of been, those are the only 4 leagues that sort of said, okay, quality really counts, we're not expanding. Other leagues are expanding, and you look at the BCHL is a little bit different because that was a merger. They got 5 existing teams jumping.
Right. Well, I was just going to say, I like what the BCHL did. They expanded, but they expanded by taking somebody else's top teams, right? They took top 5 teams or whatever out of the Alberta Junior Hockey League. That's great. I mean, and they took the Brooks Bandits. You could argue that the Brooks Bandits is, one of the I'd say for sure top 3 junior A programs in the world in terms of the strength of the team. Right, in terms of how good they are, it's they were just sitting there jacking some high end teams from another league for their expansion, which was, that's, I mean, I guess is the is the way to do it. Like it, instead of creating more, you're just, you know, I don't want to use the word take because those teams could have stayed if they wanted, but they convinced those teams, hey, grass is greener, come over here, and they expanded their league by taking the top teams out of a different league.
And I think as Alberta teams that also wanted to do that. I don't know if it's totally a BC league saying, come over here, as Alberta league saying, those teams saying, hey, we want something better. And
yeah, you're probably right.
You have so yeah, exactly. It wasn't truly an expansion. But the problem with now expansion is good from a standpoint, a lot of our listeners and those of us in the advising field, because there are more opportunities for kids. And that's great. But on the other hand, doesn't necessarily add quality to a league. That's where you get hard pressed because suddenly you're just bringing in more players and you're spreading the talent more thin. And it's, there's no question. I think that we have an awful lot of junior teams here. And, we're at a point where we tier them. And the tiering, I'm not sure that's the way we tier has nothing to do with caliber of hockey. And that's one major problem we have is it really has nothing to do with the level of hockey you play. It has to do with your budget and how much you're willing to charge, how much you're going to charge in tuition. Those are the criteria. So, I for a long time argued to USA Hockey that they should have a different tiering system where they look at how many players are produced for higher leagues to go on to play college hockey directly out of your league at Division I level, Division III, etc. Guys that go to play major junior hockey, guys are drafted by the NHL, and you have a point system. And the best teams get to be called Tier 1, and then we move down Tier 2 and Tier 3, but they'll hear nothing about that. That's not acceptable.
Yeah. So yeah, and in Canada too, like it goes by population too, right? Like so, like if, for instance, like if you want a junior A program, even if you have the budget to do it, but you don't have the population in your town, they won't give you a junior A program.
Well, right, we'll see what happens with BCHL. There's BCHL's out of hockey. We'll see what happens with BCHL because they're outside of Canada now. They can do anything they want. So, but yeah, there are rules like that. But again, does it have anything to do with hockey and the caliber of hockey? No, it just it's finance. It's all. One guy once said about a lot of the meetings you have in USA Hockey, and I'm sure it's true in Hockey Canada too, is the one thing that's missing in that head table, they're taking the votes for rules and whatnot, are the hockey people. It's the owners that are up there. It's not the hockey people sitting there that make the decisions. The decisions are made by the owners. And they're generally making it for economic reasons. It has nothing to do whatsoever with hockey. And that's the sad truth. There's absolutely, hockey doesn't even come into the equation.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I mean, I put out a video a long time, like 2 or 3 years ago, right now, saying why winning was the number one thing in junior hockey, not development and everything, and and part of it was based off of the finances at the owners. Obviously, they're at the Tier 1 and Tier 2 level, like the tuition free leagues, they're paying the bill for the for the players to be there, and they're the money drives it, so just kind of to your point, they're making decisions based off of, the financial piece, not necessarily the hockey piece. So, it's and going back to what you said before about more opportunity for players. That's why when the NCDC first expanded out west, everybody was like, "Oh, this is terrible. There's too much, too much hockey now and everything." I mean, I'll take as much free hockey as somebody wants to give. Like I have no problem with expansion. Not to have a problem with expansion in Tier 3, but like I have no problem with expansion in free to play leagues. Like, let more players play for free. Like that's great. And the thing too is like it comes down to the recruiting a lot. Like when everyone was asking about the NCDC West, like, okay, what do you think that it's going to be like? Well, it depends how they recruit, right? If they can convince guys to leave other high-end leagues, they're going to be high-end. If they can't and they're going to be, last in line, they're going to be weak. So like it depends on the recruiting. And it's the same thing with, with the North American Hockey League. And, they went from 4 imports to 6 imports a couple years ago. And I like to think that might be because of me. Because you're gonna laugh. This is funny. So I'm sitting there talking to a GM in the league one day it may have been over the summer, and I'm telling them, because we're talking about expansion. I'm like, why don't they just bump your imports? I'm like, if you guys all bump your imports from 4 to 6, let's say there's 30 teams in the North American League. I don't know what it was back then, but let's take 30, right? If everybody bumps their imports from 4 to 6, you can take 2 more players that normally you can't get. 2 players times 30 teams is 60 players, right? That's 3 teams worth of players of game day roster. That's 3 teams worth of players that you can now bring into the league, right? And if you recruit the right players, you can now sell 3 new franchises, and you can argue that the league will get better, not worse, because if you're recruiting the right way, those extra imports you're taking in, right? Those 60 new imports, they might be better than some of the non-imports that are already here. So you could argue that the league will get better, not worse. Why don't you guys just bump your imports? And he's like, that's smart. I'm going to mention it. He's like, I'm going to mention that at our next board meeting. And then, like a year or two later or whatever it is, they bump from 4 to 6. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe next they'll bump to 8. I mean, you could always, I think you could always keep expanding the league as long as you're also expanding the player pool that you could take from, and then the teams are being successful with bringing those players in that normally you wouldn't be able to get.
Well, NCDC did the same thing with imports. They basically allow imports, and they've opened up themselves to having a lot more good players. Well, the one problem you have in junior hockey in any new venture is this. It's not like in professional hockey where you can go out and do what? If you want good players, just throw money at them. If you want to start a new league tomorrow, throw a ridiculous amount of money, an inordinate amount of money, and you'll get good players. Problem is in junior hockey, you can't do that. And you're talking about kids' careers, you have exactly one career. You can't go and say, I'll go to this Rebel Junior League or this new junior league
and be the test.
You can't waste a year. A year is precious. You can't waste that. And so there's simply no way to get those recruits. Whereas even in college hockey, it's easier because you're in a good league. You join Hockey East. You're in a good league. So you're starting out with a program that may start weak, but you look at it as an opportunity. You're coming in a new program, and look at Penn State, how it develops so rapidly. You come into a new college program, it's already plugged in. It's an expansion team, and it's plugged into a good league. But a whole new venture, it's like starting a new college league, would be very difficult. Because why would I send a kid, or a kid would want to go to a league, but they were Division III last year? Okay, you're offering scholarships here, but still you were Division III. So why is a top kid going to go to that league? Probably not. They're not gonna. It's something that expansion within leagues, yes, but new entities, and it's like even you get a new division that's not playing against a division in the league, and geographic location is so important in junior for scouting. You should be where there are colleges, where college people can easily come and see you. The closer you are to college hockey, the better you are in junior. There's no question. You look at playing in New England or playing in the Midwest, the Northern Midwest. Colleges can go there any day of the week to go and see you. It's not hard, Whereas if you're out in the middle of nowhere, something in the NHL, you'd better play well in Blaine because that's where you're going to be seen. Otherwise, it'll be Video City for the most part. You might be seen a couple times a year, but not much. And if you're out in the NCDC West, teams aren't going to fly out to Idaho on a long shot hope of seeing a player. Those teams have limited budgets and they have limited staffs. It literally can't be done, and especially you get the Division III teams. Their staffs they not only have short staffs but very short budgets. And Division III can't fly guys everywhere. So you want to have a junior league somewhere as best possible where there's college hockey to go watch you. Because if you're a recruit, you play up with a team in New England. God, think about how many colleges are within a 90-minute drive of coming to see you. It's not hard. An assistant coach wants to come see you and recruit you on a Wednesday night. It's just a quick drive across town in Boston. Whereas if you're in the middle of nowhere, they're not going to fly a guy 3 hours out to see you unless you're darn good. And God help you if you're that second best kid on the team. Nobody's flying out to see you. You've got to be seen when you go somewhere else on the road. And how often are you to be on the road to be seen? that's an important equation in junior hockey. So I think like when they start some of these leagues up in some of these places, I'm saying do you really purposely not want these players to be scouted because nobody's going to see them? And the only way they're to get in there is a very difficult route. Is somehow getting attention and getting seen, and something there have a much there'd be a lot less people shopping lists. And if you're up in New England or if you're playing for like one of the Minnesota teams, the USA, not the USHL, of course, the USHL is generally in sensible places, and people see the USHL, and also because it's a great league. But in the North American League, playing on one of those northern teams, those teams in the northern third of the country, you're seeing a heck of a lot more.
Right, you'll get the barrier to entry is less. I mean, like and Randall says, "Thank God for Instat and Live Barn." Yeah, and I think I think I think he's completely right. Like I think that before some of these before a lot of the video services and stuff, I think it definitely was a bigger problem than it is today. Like I do believe that every kid can be seen today because of the video services and stuff. But at the same time, there's no doubt it's definitely easier to see a kid when you're in a better location, right? Like to your point, it's they could drive down on a Wednesday and see. So like it's the barrier to entry is a lot lower. Obviously the places that there's that there's colleges, and it's I think that it could take a little bit of convincing, if you will, like for some of these teams and players that are playing off the quote unquote grid. Like they'll probably check them out on video first, and then if they see somebody they like or see a group that they like, then they'll come out and watch. But I think everybody has to remember too that again, it's what's the best bang for the buck in terms of the scouting, right? If you're going to take a trip out west, right? If you're a Division III school, first place you're probably going to go is going to be a North American League, right? Like, and same thing, like, for Division I, obviously they're going to be, there's the most qualified candidates in the USHL. Then there's the second most qualified candidates in the North American League. So I think obviously the strength of the league plays a big part in that. Like, the BCHL obviously does great. And, and the other thing too is like, BCHL is, there's probably some, more heavily populated areas over there, right? I imagine, more people know a guy out in, Vancouver than know a guy in, the middle of wherever. Right. So there's different things that play into it.
Beauty of that league is just flying to Vancouver or Edmonton, and you can see that league very well. Just going to one of those two cities or both of them, and you can pretty much get a good tour of the league. So it's not centrally located, and of course it is the league, but it's league driven. USHL, are you going to fly out to watch USHL? Of course you are. Right. However, are you going to be preferring to see a team come into Chicago or fly out as far as you can to the most isolated team? You probably want to fly to Chicago, given a choice.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Again, the barrier to entry. You make it as easy. What I always tell people with with Scout Central, and I've said it to you too, is you want to make it as easy as possible for somebody to see you, like you, got to have you. Right. Like that was the whole premise behind Scout Central, and it's the same thing here. Like, obviously to your point, if you're playing in a major city with a major airport that's a major hub or whatever, it's easier for somebody to get there, and it's easier for them to get there, see you, hopefully like you, hopefully got to have you.
Well, also in the BCHL, just base yourself in Vancouver, and a lot of teams are not that far of a driving distance from Vancouver, and right in the suburbs and right by. So you see a lot of that league coming out of there. Now, of course, a big thing that comes into play, and you like Instat and stuff, it's very good, but the problem you're missing with Instat, or I can think of a few things as Scout. First of all, you don't see the stuff behind the play. You only see the puck. You don't see if a guy has bad body language. You don't see him arguing with the coach. You don't see what he does with his teammates afterwards. Is he giving the guy a slap on the back? Is he a guy that's a little animated on the bench? Or is he just a lame duck? Or is he a guy that's complaining? You don't get the body language. You don't find out much about the player. Also, you may not notice that guy. How often does it happen in scouting? You have a guy that you're not going there to see, but he comes in off the radar screen. You
Right.
just keep on noticing him. Now, in stat, you skip right over him. You're not even watching him. Now, you go and watch a game, you know something, you're going to keep on saying, number 8 is pretty darn good. I keep on noticing him. Who is he? I haven't heard much about him. And also, there's also the personal touch. You don't get to talk to people or find out about kids. You don't get to meet the kids, get to meet parents, or guess talk to people. You can find out a lot about a kid by talking to people. If people are saying a lot of good stuff about him, he's probably a good kid. But if you have everybody in that rink having a nasty word to say about the kid, you got to start wondering: is there a red flag here? Is there something wrong with this kid?
Yeah.
Is there a problem? And you don't learn that stuff away from the rink. You have to go to the rink to find this stuff out. And I've had it happen so many times where I've seen a kid. I go to the rink and I want to see one kid. I'm there to see him. But darn if another kid doesn't steal the show. Saying, wow, Instat won't let me do that because I'm just going to go shift to shift and watch my man, and I'm never to see that. I'll never see my in quotes number 8 here. I will never see him.
Right.
So, it's it'll never replace scouting, and especially if you're that kid that's our in quotes number 8. Something. You'd better be someplace you'll be seen because you're not the guy to be tuning in to watch Instat for you. Instat breaks it down shift by shift. The player you want to watch, it's Scout's paradise for watching a star player. When I want to look up a player, gosh, you cut right through and see him and watch him and get all the stats and everything. It's tremendous. But to find that secondary guy from off the radar screen, you're not going to do it with Instat.
Right. Yeah. No, it's very, very valid point. Let's, I guess, kind of on the topic of, expansions. Obviously, Tier 3 has been expanding as well. Do you think that's just getting ridiculous at this point? Now, I don't know. I don't even remember what teams this was, but do you remember that game this year in the USPHL that was 37-1?
I remember the score. Yes, I do. It's something that you don't forget. It's something that it's something I haven't heard of very often in hockey. The only thing I've heard of it of that was some international games against some very obscure nations and some very top nations.
Like that wouldn't even be good in baseball. Wouldn't even be good.
In Canadian football, if you're winning 37-1, the team only has a single. That's a pretty bad score.
It's just like I don't even understand how that happens. Like it's almost like. It's like mind-boggling.
It is, but the problem is at midget hockey we see this happen sometimes. It just carries up. You bring in these teams for money. Let's be honest; they're in there for the entry fee. They don't really have any qualification to be in the league, but they're brought in because of pay that entry fee. And so, Tier 3 has expanded rampantly. And again, you bring in organizations, some of them that just are ill-equipped to do this, and the problem you have is these leagues, so many of them have egos. They don't want to work together. You have NCDC and NA. We know there's bickering between those two. We absolutely know that. It's more NCDC towards the NAHL. It used to be a little bit the other way, but more NCDC now. Oh, we're as good as them, and why do you want to go there? And then, of course, we have the EHL starting that. And the EHL tried to pass a rule. Get a load of this. Where if you went to an NCDC team, you couldn't come back to your EHL team from the year before if you went to NCDC team. Now, suppose that rule has been squashed because the coaches hated it. And it came in because of an ego reason that you had one team come in that happens to have a team in NA and they're NCDC, pardon me, and they're afraid that they take players to NCDC team and move them back and forth freely to the EHL, and you'd have those organization playing footsie. And so you have some EHL people sit there and try to tell you, oh, the NCDC won't get you any more than we will. And as long as you have leagues taking that attitude towards one another of I've got to be as good as you or I am as good as you, and it's all business and all recruiting and that sort of thing, it creates the monster we have.
Yeah, I once had an EHL team tell me that I had a kid that was going to go to the NA, and the team told me that they're the same as the NA. The only difference is you have to pay. what?
That's funny, but go
I'm
on.
I'm just like sitting there. I was like dumbfounded. I'm like, what are you talking about? But like, but at the same time, it's like, hold on. It's like, all right, let's live in Looney Tune world for a second. All right, okay, I'll take the trip with you to Looney Tune world. All right, we're living in crazy world. Even let's pretend that the EHL is as good as the NA. Why on earth would this kid pay you 10 grand to do something that he could do for free? That's the exact same, according to you. It doesn't make any sense. Like the whole it's like even it just makes no sense to me. So like to your point, like with some of these, when some of these tier three, teams in the pay to play leagues try to discourage kids from going to the NCDC, I mean, like, look, is NCDC the greatest thing in the world? No, it's not, right? Like, it's number three behind the USHL and the NA in the United States, like clearly number three. But, you know, why would a kid pay somebody else 10 grand when he can go to the NCDC for free? Like, it seems like I feel like everybody forgets that because I hear the same thing. I hear like, oh, we're the same as the NCDC. No, you're not. And even if you are, you're $10,000 more. Like, what are you talking about?
The thing is, I have a lot of respect for the EHL. Number one, because the
Well,
EHL
it's
does
a good
produce
league. I'm just saying it's
players.
10
Well, but
grand.
yeah,
The NCDC is free. You
well,
know?
not only that, but any players played in both leagues will tell you there is a difference. All right. I know guys have played in both leagues. They'll say the
Yeah.
NCDC is a faster league. It is, no question.
Yeah.
The pace is better, and the high end players are better than the EHL players because precisely what you're saying. Part of it is they can play for free. Part of it is there's a little pedigree to that league. But so I was just saying it's a great league, but I agree 100% with you. And the problem with it is that but you have these ego situations of, oh, we're as good as the NCDC, and it's ego talking and marketing, trying to market yourself, but instead of
Yeah.
marketing yourself for what you are, which is as good a league as you possibly could want to get into Division III college hockey. It's a tremendous Division III. Just market yourself as that. A great league to go to Division III. NCDC, largely Division III, but you have an odd Division I guy there. There is that difference. An odd guy that's going to move up a little bit, yeah. But the problem is you don't market yourself as the same thing, just like the NCDC can't market itself as the NAHL. They're different leagues. And, they are, the NCDC in some ways has seen the light. They have the 20-year-old rule now, which is good. They've limited 20s. They're having more young guys play, which I think is a good route for them. And they sort of are creating an identity. But nonetheless, there still are guys that like to play the game of, we can get you the same thing that NAHL can get you. Well,
Yeah, it's just not. It's just because here's the thing too. I think a lot of people don't dig deep enough into, like, a lot of guys. They'll look at commitments, and somebody will market their commitment like, okay, like, hey, we got, and again, maybe back in the older days when the NCDC was getting more Division I commitments, or like maybe back in the old EJ days, before it became NCDC. But a lot of people don't look at the types of commitments, right? It's like where the NCDC team, they'd get their Division I commitment, and the kid's paying full boat to go to a bottom end program in Division I, and then you look at the kid out of the NA, or or USHL or whatever, that's got the full ride to North Dakota. On paper, yeah, they're 1-1. It's one commitment and one commitment, but there's a big difference between those two commitments. And it's the same thing, like even in Division III, that a lot of guys, I don't think they realize when they look at the commitments, they just take the face value. Okay, this team got 6 D3 commitments last year. Well, okay, did you look at where the commitments are to? Did you see if those kids are even playing? Like, where
sure.
Some other teams, they might get top end D3 commitments, and the kids are playing big minutes as freshmen, right? There's a big difference between those commitments, but I feel like that's a big thing that's overlooked by a lot of players and parents, is they don't look at the the type of commitment. As I'm saying this, we got Swain's Hockey Skills and Development. Ryan was on here last week. Just commented, given the EHL commits tons and tons of players to D3 NCAA, do you think those players actually play or are they bottom end guys on most teams or scratches for the first few years? I would say, me personally, I'd say a lot of them, and this is just me, kind of like reading between the lines. Like, I would say a good amount. I mean, yeah, probably some play, like maybe a good amount play, but I'd say a good amount don't play too. Like, I think the thing that a lot of players and families don't realize is everybody has, you know, the best league to go Division 3, I think, is the North American Hockey League, right? Like,
Yeah.
everybody talks about how many D1 guys come from the NA, but what nobody ever talks about is how many guys from the NA don't go to D1, and it's a ton, right? And
Oh yeah.
they go D3, right? So by the time the guys are committing the EHL guys, the EHL is not their first choice, right? Of player pool, I don't think, right? And I think that there's a lot of guys from the EHL that commit as the last commit or the last couple commits, to round out the recruiting class because of what you said earlier, the location, right? So when it's late in the recruiting season and they're, oh shit, we got a couple more spots to fill, it's easy to go grab a kid from the EHL for that last couple spots, right? Now, with that said, there's some very good players that come out of the EHL and probably do play right away and are impact guys. And, so I'm not, sitting here trying to say that the EHL, does nothing but bottom end commits. There's definitely some high end guys, that come out of there and are impact guys, I would say. But again, going back to what I was saying a couple minutes ago, I think too many people take the face value number too seriously and don't dig deeper into the stuff and look at it.
Well, it's not a crucial number that people ignore too, and this goes for two leagues in particular. Is that how many guys are committed before they get there? Now, to be God's honest truth with you about a lot of USHL players, an awful lot of those players are committed before they get to the USHL. Same thing
Sure.
with NCD. However, the NA is a little different animal. A lot of their guys were not committed until they got to the NAHL. The superstars NCDC, a lot of them, I'm not saying all, there are some guys committed out at NCDC, absolutely. But a lot of their superstars were commits before they got to that league. And the USHL, great league that it is, a lot of guys, and it shows how good they are. They get all these D1 commits going there, but it's a league that has an awful lot of guys that were committed going in. You can get committed out of there, of course you do, but there's an awful lot, a lot of those numbers are eaten into when you look at the numbers that were committed first. NA is the opposite. An awful lot of those guys were not commits till they got to that league. They are probably the best league in the country at taking you over that bar. You're that 10% below being an Division I player. They'll get you over that bar to being a Division I player probably more efficiently than any other league in the country.
Yeah. Now, do you think they're doing? See, now, so I agree with you about the numbers, about that more guys are getting their commitment in the NA than receiving their commitment in the USHL. But what I don't think the NA is doing anything better than the USHL in terms of that. I think it's just almost like a catch-22 where, the USHL is the top league, so they're getting the best players. The
Right.
best players typically are already committed. Like, if you
Yeah.
took a group of uncommitted, like a large group of uncommitted players and threw them in the USAHL, I think they all get their commitments if they're truly that good.
No question.
Yeah.
I wasn't really meaning that because the USHL does do great coaching and everything. But that's the point. The guys are already committed when they go there. So
Right.
it's nothing about the league. It's just the fact they bring in that level of player that's already committed. They bring in those top level talents that are already committed. So does it diminish it as a league? Of course not. But at the same, in fact, in a way, it endorses it as a league. It says this is what you're going to be playing against. This is the talent level you're playing against. But
Yeah.
from a developmental standpoint, the truth is, remember, there's a catch to that. That if you're bringing all these Division I commits, if you're not a Division I commit, where are you going to fit in that lineup? Are you really going to be playing over that kid that's going to University of Minnesota? Are you really going to go over that kid that's going to Wisconsin? Are you really going to be on the first line over those guys? It's a much steeper, nastier climb
Yeah.
than when you have to climb over guys that don't have that commit.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And look, I mean, you know, we could, talk about all this kind of stuff till we're blue in the face. Like, here's the beauty of it, you know, and I stress this all the time, comes down to your performance, right? Like, as everybody sees, like, there's no one path, right? We're sitting here talking for over an hour now about different, about different things and different paths and this and that and these numbers, those numbers. Like, you know, the end of the day, guys, there's no substitute for top end performance, right? If your performance is top end in any league, good things typically happen, right? If you're bad in any league, typically nothing happens. And it's you can go to USHL and same thing. I mean, USHL again, everybody talks about all the Division 1 players. How about the players that forget Division 1? They get cut from the USHL. Hey, thanks for coming. Go play in the NA. Go play in the NCDC. Like, you're not even good enough to be here. Like, forget about developing you for the next level. Like, we don't even want you here, right? So, like, the key is, guys, like, the number, my opinion, the number one thing is your performance.
Oh, absolutely. And you got to understand that, remember, in U.S. junior hockey, we discussed this before, it's all about winning. So they don't, and it comes back to that, when we got off that tangent about athletes versus acquired skill, that's another thing that comes into play here. Teams will win now. So they want that, they're not going to take that, in quotes, athlete we can develop. They're going to take the kid that can play now, that has the skills, has experience. And it does come, and that also plays another role in these leagues are, remember, when you're playing with and against other great players, they play at an entirely different pace and you develop far better if you're playing with and against the great athletes. You're playing against secondary athletes. Again, hockey is a little bit different. Like we go back again, not to go back to the same old thing, but the athletic thing. So much of it is pace, playing with and against players, handling the pace, handling the game at the world's fastest game, having to be able to process it and handle it. You only develop that through repetition with and against other great players. It doesn't matter if you're the fastest guy. In fact, the fastest guy out there in a lousy league, you know something, you're going to learn how to have glue on your stick. So you're going to learn very quickly. You're just going to be flying around people. You're not going to learn to be a complete player. You're not going to develop on-ice vision. You're not going to think it's going to be something that's too darn easy. And, hockey is like baseball, again, to make the baseball hockey analogy. That the only way you're ever going to make the major leagues is if you face X number of fastballs. You have to have faced X number to have that experience, or you're not going to play Major League Baseball. And that's sort of the same here. And you're only going to face our answer 100 those 100-mile-an-hour, 90-mile-an-hour fastballs in a really good league. And so the league can play a major role. Yeah. But you have to be able to play in it, as you point out, because the USHL is such a hard league to crack that it's very easy to get lost in the shuffle and cut out there. Same with the BC League. It's an excellent league. It's not easy to cut it in the BC League. And none of these leagues sit there and say, can I make this player great in 2 years? A major junior will do that. But on the other side of the coin, these leagues are out to win now. So you can be that great player that in 2 years be a tremendous hockey player. But they're not going to have patience to wait around for you. They're just going to cut you. And it's an unfortunate fact. It's American hockey. In junior hockey, we've gotten to that stage where I've had people pointedly say that to me. I'm looking to win now. I don't care about potential. And that's a horrible thing, but you hear it from people. You do hear it from people.
Well, I mean, look, it is what it is. And like what I say too is like, we had that comment from Swain's Hockey Skills and Development. So Ryan Swain was doing the video with me a couple years ago about, when I put that video out about, junior hockey being about winning. And, like what I tell people too is like those coaches want to move up as well. Like they're like, it's actually crazy to think that a coach is just going to, sacrifice 30 years of his life to move you to college. No, he's trying to move up. He wants to get the hell out of that league too. And he wants to move up, and he's going to do that. He's going to do that by winning. That's because again, like that's what's at the upper levels and stuff, like that's what's paying the bills for the owner, winning, drawing fans in, this, that, selling dasher ads. Like, the more the team's winning, the more fans are coming. The more fans are coming, the more tickets you're selling, the more sponsorship the more your sponsorship is worth, the more sponsorship you're selling. Like, they want to win, right? That's how the coaches move up and get jobs, by winning. I mean, I've seen some coaches that I think are, pretty, bad for the hockey world. They win a lot of games, and guess what? They keep moving up. So like I think that's important for everybody to realize, and it's not a bad thing. It is what it is, and just understand it. That's why I say performance. Help them win games. If you can help them win games, they're going to be interested in you. They're not going to care where you're coming from if they're convinced that you can help them win games. So that's the key, is How can you convince them that you can help them win games?
And there's no incentive, unfortunately, in U.S. hockey for producing players. Remember, in Canadian hockey, all right, in major junior, you get draft money. In midget hockey, yes, they get draft money. If you take players out of midget teams and bring them up to major junior, they get money. They get paid some money, and so there are draft subsidies involved. And in Europe, the youth programs are run by pro teams, and the whole criterion, if you're running a European youth program, is how many players did you bring up to the big club, or became good enough the big club could sell. Here we have virtually no incentive to produce players. There's virtually none. There's no compensation. That teams will sit there and say, okay, we'll compensate you if you produce players for higher levels. And it's something that, it's a flaw to our system. We just don't really have it here. And part of it's probably because we don't have the money. Let's be honest, that hockey in the United States is driven by you people out there paying tuitions. It doesn't have very much other revenue coming in. So it's not like in Europe where you have a pro team that sponsors the whole program, pays all the bills, or major junior, you have a tremendous, even midget clubs in Canada have some tremendous sponsorship. I remember that when I was with the Nordiques, the St. Foy midgets told me they had, I forget how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of sponsorship money they had coming in from local companies. You don't have that here. You don't have that massive sponsorship paying the bills. And so nobody's very free with their money. And so it's unfortunate we have a tuition-based system that in the end, ultimately, there's no reward for developing players. Really, I should rephrase it. The rewards you say are there, but the actual financial direct rewards really aren't there. It's more or less self-promotion that's doing it, et cetera, et cetera. And again, a lot of that's winning because you look at coaches.
Do any leagues have agreements in the United States? Like I think the NA and USHL have an agreement, but I don't know. I don't think it's very much.
That's about it. No, it's nothing very much. And to say you have it going to the youth levels, you don't. Do you have it going between the other leagues? Not really. Remember, NCDC isn't even figuring in. Neither is EHL. They're not even in USA Hockey anymore. So they're out in their own orbit. So
the youth level, it's like the opposite. And like you said, it's funded unfortunately by the players and the families. Youth level, it's like the opposite. It's like, hey, come play for our NA team. Hey, look at that. We're sending you down to U18. That'll be $25,000, please. Like
exactly.
And you're with the NCDC. Hey, come play for our NCDC team. Hey, you're gonna play Premier. That'll be $10K. It's like opposite incentive.
It is because really those programs subsidize these non-tuition programs. How can these non-tuition programs make it? They don't draw crowds on a big sponsorship. They don't have television. It's not the revenue streams we have in major junior. It's not heavy revenue streams. It's not like some of the USHL teams that do draw crowds. But so they got to pay the bills somehow. So it comes down to those massive summer camps they have. It comes down to sending guys. There are teams and almost all of them have academies of some sorts now, and that helps underwrite the junior team. And of course, it's something that really it's a backward system. Yeah, it's something that you're not. It's the younger teams that are subsidizing the big team instead of the other way around, like most of the world.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like reverse incentive. It's you got all these teams underneath that are subsidizing the big team,
and what happens is suddenly we have far too many teams. It reaches a point where we have midget hockey. We have a lot of teams that are AAA and name only, and it's getting worse. You're having more programs spring up every year, and in the end, are you really producing more players? Or are you just spreading them out more? I was just at the district tryouts here a couple of weeks ago. And what was amazing is how many of our very top players we produced around here are not going to play in the area next year at 15s. We're not talking about 18s, not talking junior, not talking prep. We're talking 15.
It's absurd. It's absurd.
Yeah, I sat there and I looked at the guys there, best players: Mount St. Charles, Bishop Kearney. Penn's Elite. I'm seeing all these kids are playing anywhere but here. Detroit. Et cetera, et cetera. So in the end, we're bringing in more AAA programs around here. It's 15s, 16s, and 17s. Yet we're having our best players bled out in here. And so, exactly how's this pyramid working. Now, it's great for Mount St. Charles and Bishop Carnegie. They run tremendous programs. They really do. And that league they're in up there, the Northeast Pack is just a tremendous, NordPac's a tremendous league. But the problem is what happens to other leagues? Around here, we now have more and more AAA teams, a couple of AAA leagues, and yet we're losing our best young players to other areas for the most part. And what's happening to the remainder of the best young players? Something, I'm not going to mention the team, but they're all on one team. It seemed like 90% of them were all on one team. That team should walk through the districts next year, walk right through to nationals. It shouldn't be hard for them. They're just so loaded. And I won't mention the team, but trust me, they're loaded.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the points I had here on my list was the youth recruiting. Because I remember you and I were talking about it on the phone, probably about a month or two ago, that how the youth hockey recruiting for the top teams has almost become like pro recruiting, like where it's just everybody's they're just fielding the team slowly over the course of the season, and during the course of the previous season, and guys are building, they're flying guys in, and it's and even just the mentality. Like I had a coach, and I told you this, I had a coach that and same thing, I'm not going to say who it is, but I had a coach that I was talking about a youth 15 player, and the coach tells me, he's like, or sorry, he's a U16 player, U16, and the coach tells me, he's like, Eric, he's like, if we bring him in, and if he's not good, he's gonna sit, I'm not gonna play him, and I'm not giving him any money back. That was like conversation one, right? And and whatever. Like, I'm just happy the guy was honest with me, right? Like, they could run the team however they want to run the team, and he explained like, hey, I got an owner, and this is what he wants, and this is what I'm paid to do, and this is how it goes. And and again, I'm just happy that the guy was upfront and honest with me, right? Like, I respect him for that. Like, but I think people need to know that again, like you want to be like, yeah, just a lot of these top programs, it's really becoming very pro in terms of the recruiting.
You can be a fourth liner there very easily, whereas you could be a first liner somewhere else. You may be better off being a first liner somewhere else. And they're great programs. You can't blame kids for going there if they're going to play. Can I blame these top prospects for wanting to play there? Of course not. They're tremendous leagues, tremendous programs. But there's something functionally wrong. We are basically almost writing off and saying we're to export 90% of our top 15-year-olds. We're to just, without even firing a shot, export. I shouldn't say it's 90% because one team is very good, but on the other side of the coin, we're coming back to the same old problem that we might as well just buy their tickets to nationals right now today in May, because they're going to be there next year. I can't see anybody in this district beating them. They're just too loaded, and it's a great team, great organization. Heck, I support that organization myself, but because it's a great place for a kid to play. On the other hand, there's something wrong functionally with our hockey when we're to a point that local kids are leaving the en masse and then just staying in one place, and then some of the other places around here, another club that will go nameless, that loves bringing in kids from very far outside the area. And what are they saying to the local player? What's the statement? It's all well and good to give these kids a chance to play here, but at the same time, what statement are we making? We're saying, does the local kid mean anything at a certain point? And at a certain point, you're saying the local mean anything.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, I don't know I guess how you fix it might be USA Hockey says like, hey, like we're literally doing, like what's the point in having districts if you don't have to play in your district? Why have those districts? Like, it makes no sense.
It's something that and part of the problem is that, and part of the problem is, yes, we bloated the competition. And the thing at NordPac, one reason why do so many kids go there, and why do teams go to that one team around here? Simple. They go to a program that is in a great league and a program that goes off playing a great schedule. They go out, they cut out the chaff, and the problem is we built so much chaff around here that it's hard to tell a kid, well, do you want to be here next week and win a game 16-1? It's hard to tell that to a top player, where you could be in a league where it's be competitive every week. And so a lot of the blame is that we just keep on indefinitely expanding. And that whole idea there's no standards of organizations. You pay the money, you're in the league, you get the votes, whatever politics there are. But in the end, really, does quality count? I question that about a lot of the situations here. You have a lot of teams that really are double A, and they're called triple A, and they persist at triple A.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to sort of tier things, I know we're tiered and all that, but I think we have too many leagues. They don't like each other. We have too many agendas. Instead of the one agenda we should all have, and that's putting the best hockey on ice and developing the best hockey players. We seem to have lost that agenda somewhere along the way. That as a group, as individuals all want it, but as a group, it doesn't. It seems like every individual says, "I want it, but I don't want you to have it." And at some point, you have a league, you have to say, "I want it, but I want you to have it too."
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that's one thing that teams working together. I think it makes the league strong, right? Like if the teams, if the league does well, the teams do well, right? And like I had this, like I remember a few years ago now, I was, dealing with a situation up in Canada, and the team told me they're like, "Hey, we'll trade this player wherever he wants to go, just not in our league. We will not keep him in our league." And to me, that was the dumbest thing ever. I'm like, why would you take a top player and force him out of the league? Everybody should be working together to, and I know obviously you're competing and you want to win, right? Of course, but you should try to keep the top talent in the league. So and the kid wanted to stay in the league. He was dying to stay in the league. It's like, hey, the kid wants to be here. He's a top player. Why would you force him out of the league? Well, work together and keep building the league. If the league does well, the teams do well. But I feel like a lot of guys don't, they don't think that far into this. And like same thing, like I had a team one year, that the team was really really struggling, and it was early on in the season, but they hadn't won a game yet. And same thing, they're trading a player. They're like, oh, we'll trade him anywhere he wants to go, just not in our division. Like, what? You guys are like 0-20. What are you talking about? Not in our division? Like, what? You're gonna lose the division because of this kid? Like, you're 0-20. You're a terrible coach. You literally can't be doing worse. You don't even have to be on the bench. Your team literally can't be doing worse. You're 0-20. Like, what are you talking about? Why would you not trade them, in the division?
People have a very dumb view of leagues, and that is a league is as good as its best team. No, it's not. It's only as good as its worst team. The best team can be the best team on earth. They're just running over a shot in a league. It does not make it a good league. It does not make it good for anybody in the end. If the worst team is pretty darn good, like again, go to that Northeast Pack. Who's the worst team in that league? I don't know if I can tell you who the worst team is. And that's a statement on, gee, that's a great league. When you can't say, Bill, who's the worst team in that league? That's a really good league. Every game's meaningful. Every game's good. On the other hand, most leagues, I can sit there and say, well, I can tell you who the heck isn't the best team in the league.
Well, it's like, look at the BCHL and the AJHL. Why did those teams leave the AJ? Because they thought it'd be funny? No, because they left to go to the BC because it's a better league, right? And I think the AJ, to your point, I think the AJ is significantly lower end league than it was last year.
Yes, it is.
Like those 5 teams leaving, I think dramatically hurt the reputation of the league. I don't think the AJ is going to be the same next year as it was, as it's always been. I always had that, and I don't know what, I don't know how you feel. You probably feel similar, but I always had the AJ as the second best league in Canada for tier 2 behind the BCHL. Now I don't know if it will be.
It was. Now it is.
I can't say that it definitely won't be, but I'm not convinced that the AJ is the second best tier 2 junior A league in Canada anymore.
No, it suddenly moved back closer to a lot of leagues. It was clearly the number 2 to me, but now, no, you're right. It's not even, there's a lot of leagues that could be better than, but not necessarily. But a big problem is, keep in mind why that happens. Like, a lot of people aren't familiar with how the NCDC started. All right. Way back when the old EHL expanded heavily. And they had a team down here in Philadelphia. And one game, the Junior Bruins came down here, and the coach got mad. They were already winning the game big, but he pulled his goalie at 16 minutes left. And suddenly Junior Bruins won that game by an astronomical score. And at that point, that just tore it. They said, already we're coming down here. There aren't very many good games. We're playing against some teams this league that aren't very good. And that tears it. We're not going down there to have a game like that ever again. And
Yeah.
soon you had the Hitmen and the Junior Bruins say, okay, we're starting a new league. We're tossing you guys out. We're starting a new league. And it wasn't just because they're the high-end teams. No, it's because the low-end teams, they got so pissed off. And that wasn't just that one team. They got so angry at the low-end teams not being able to offer competition. They said, why am I here?
Right. Like we're not paying to bust everybody down, win the game by 7 and go home. Like it's just, we're not paying for that anymore.
No, it's not worth it. It's a waste of time for everybody. And so, and you're seeing a little bit of that in somewhat the local youth hockey around here with a two-league situation. And you have two very prominent teams around here. Two of our most prominent teams, the Mid-Atlantic region, now are basically independents. Why? Because they couldn't get any local competition. So they said in the end, why are we doing this? We're going to play the minimal number of games we have to get district eligible around here. But you know something, we're playing independent. And it's not because the best of the league wasn't good. It's because the worst of the league just got tired of winning 10-1 hockey games. I don't blame those teams. Why would they want to do that? You're collecting all this money. And I still see it a little bit in the youth level. When you go to games with some of the better teams, I've seen them win 12-1, 12-2, and I'm saying to myself, man, what am I doing here? I just wasted 2 hours because did I learn a darn thing about these kids? Nothing I couldn't learn in pylon drills. I know the only thing I know is they stay awake during the goaltender can stay awake, falling asleep in his net, and the kids keep on trying to score, but I didn't learn a darn thing about them as hockey players. And the other poor kids, what did it do for them? They never saw the puck. So what can I even say if there's a decent kid on that team? He never had a chance to touch the puck. So how do I know he's any good?
Yeah. No, it's like I said towards the beginning of this, it's an interesting time we're in now. And, I think it just kind of shows people too, like, it's a lot of the confusion and chaos, if you will, in hockey. Like it's everywhere. Like the game never changes. Like, you never reach a level where just everything is smooth sailing. So you got to kind of learn how to be able to work under pressure and work under chaos, or, might not work out for you.
And I think the thing we have administratively is honestly went to two eras. At one time, this era, we were far too unimaginative in developing players. Now we just have gotten too crazy on growth. We've overgrown. We went from an area that really didn't get it for a long time to an area that now we understand a little bit better. And some teams have gotten it pretty good. Those teams that play in those great leagues sort of started figuring out development. But as an entity, I think by and large around here, there's no one entity to blame. The problem is that's the whole problem. We don't have one entity. It's several entities doing it. And it's the point that we've gotten, I don't know if I'd say the word creative, but it's become the Wild West is what it's become.
Yes.
It's the point.
Yes.
It's the Wild West. There is no order to it. And it's getting more and more disorder. Like this year, we have 3 new academies. Now that's wonderful. They could be great programs, but again, you're getting more fragmentation. Instead of just building around those academies and top programs, just fragmenting more. And in the end, are we really going to see the level of hockey improve? Not unless we start a league that is suddenly I always been a strong advocate of an Eastern high performance league. Now NORPAC is sort of that, although I think its scope it's a 6-team scope that is sort of spread out. I always was hoping we have more of a Mid-Atlantic type of high performance, more Mid-Atlantic based. But of course, that's out the window right now. We don't have that.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting to see how a lot of it plays out, and I mean, like a lot of the academies too. Like I feel like that market's getting oversaturated now. Like everybody has an academy, and academy just seems to be like a nice buzzword. Like some of these academies, like. It's like, all right, what makes it an academy? Like, just because, like it doesn't really seem like some of them, just like anything else, it seems like it's not, not done right. And I think those will eventually kind of come crumbling down too, because a couple of people started doing them. They were working well. There was, money in them, and, now everybody's got them. And so what do people have to do? Now there's competitions. Now everyone's undercutting each other in terms of pricing. Then they're not going to be able to, because they're undercutting each other pricing, they're not going to have money to deliver on the things they promised. And then people can have bad experiences. And it's just like, the whole thing just snowballs. Because again, it goes back to expansion. Is there too much expansion? And in some ways, yes.
And as long as they find kids will pay the checks, they'll keep on doing it. But it's not to put the blame on the kids, because the kids have to pay to play, and so they have no choice. So in the end, you're kind of stuck, and it kind of becomes a license to print money for some organizations. Some do it very well, and some of these academies will turn out to be great.
For sure.
But at the same time, it's like everything else. It's you want to find a new way to, you're a little bit pissed off, or you want to find a new way to get some revenue. Okay, we'll start a new team or start a new league. And the problem is now you have more than one league. So if you go to one league and say, hey, we want a team, and they'll say no, well, then we'll just go to the other league and we'll sign on with them, and they'll take us. If nothing, for no other reason, to spite you, they'll take us. And
right.
So you have this really real stupidity that in the end, it's out of control. Somebody's going to give the franchise and the charter. Why? Because if you don't, the other guy will. And of course, if neither of them do, they'll say, fine, we'll just go independent and start an academy. And so there's really is anarchy. You have no control on expansion. It's almost like the theory they talk about, endless universe. It just seems to keep on expanding. There doesn't seem to be anything drawing it back. And every time a new rink comes up, they're going to want a premier team. Anytime, it's just the point now where we're giving premier license out like candy. But like I say, can I blame any single person for it? No. Besides, maybe you could blame USA Hockey, that they should sort of put a kibosh on it. But again, they're getting the checks, so it's hard for them to say no. We don't want any more money from you. It's hardest thing in the human animal to make them say we don't want money. And so, as long as they're getting money from all those new teams and whatnot, going to beef their numbers up to say, oh, we have these many registered players. It makes us look good. They're not going to crack down on it either. There's nobody out there that sits down. This is the one thing the Europeans have over all of us, is the pro leagues run everything. So in the end, they are the ones that call the shots. There are drawbacks to that. I will admit it. But I will say this, there is a lot to be said for it. There is more order in European hockey. Now, to say it's all good, no, some of their junior leagues stink, to be quite honest about it. But at the same time, there is some degree of order there, and I think there's a lot we could learn from them. There's a lot we could really learn from them. And unfortunately, the most important things we could have learned from them, we haven't. We haven't learned how to bring some sort of order to our system that actually can put hockey first and all this other stuff second. But the fundamental problem in the United States is it comes back to money. It's all about tuition. So as long as we're tied to tuition, we really can't do anything like that. And do I ever see us getting off tuition? Unfortunately, I do not.
No, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not as familiar with it as you are. But so with the pro teams in Europe funding the youth programs, they're obviously doing that because they want to develop players for their own program one day, right? That'd be the equivalent of like the New Jersey Devils funding New Jersey hockey, hoping that one day it's going to, produce more NHL talent out of New Jersey, right? Are they funding it because they're being nice, or are they funding it because they're trying to grow homegrown players, or is it a little bit of both?
They want to develop homegrown players. And they also, remember, there's another avenue of revenue there. Say you're a second division team in Sweden, all right, or a team that's not a very good first division team, sort of a team on the treadmill between first, second division.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily always have to have them come to your team, but you could sell them to another big club. When they get a little bit older, you can say, okay, we have a prospect, give us this much money, you can have the kid. And so, or just develop them to a point that he starts cracking your lineup. And that's one problem in European hockey. They crack lineup signs very young, and signs that don't get the ice time and aren't handled well. But if you can crack, say, the senior lineup at 16 or 17, guess what? You turn around and go to one of the top teams in the league and say, hey, good player, could be a national team player someday. You want him? And it's not, they don't do as many trade. They don't really trade over there like we do. They'll sell players. It's like say the New Jersey Devils had that prospect. They go to the Montreal Canadiens and say, "How'd you like this kid for $1 million?" They make a cool million out of developing them, and so it's
Right. Okay.
it's
So
not a bad deal.
yeah. So that's the right. Okay. So with that, with what they're doing over there, it would be you own the players within. So like if the New Jersey Devils were funding youth hockey in New Jersey, the New Jersey Devils would own every player's rights in New Jersey from 8 years old all the way up to the NHL team, and then they could sell them off as they please.
Vertical integration. It's perfect vertical integration. And so you do have teams that sell players, yeah. And there's always the old joke in Russia. Now this is of course the old days. They had back in the old Soviet days, but Leningrad was always the farm team of Central Red Army Moscow. Anytime a Leningrad Army player was good, he suddenly be transferred in quotes to headquarters. And it was a little bit different that was, but it's the same idea of SKA Leningrad was never going to win the Russian league. So their top players end up playing for CSKA Moscow, who would dominated the Russian league. And so you had players. A lot of players came up in the rurals. A lot of players are players from up in the Urals. You have a couple of towns there. Those guys always magically ended up in Moscow. By the time they were a reasonable age, they might play their junior hockey out there, out in Metalburg or something like that, and then they'd end up going to Moscow when they're a little bit older. It's not totally unlike that in other places, although in Sweden, usually the big clubs have a habit of getting the best players very young, recruiting them. But yeah, I've seen some players that played for some of those small teams in Sweden that end up in the big teams. And that's more of a franchise, more of a sale thing than it was the old days in Russia. A different system there, but it's the same idea.
Right.
The player is developed by one team and is going to play elsewhere eventually, and there's some reward coming back. Now it varies exactly what it is, but it's usually money. Usually they pay a transfer fee.
Okay. Yeah. No, it makes sense. So, all right. Awesome. Yeah. No, this was a fun episode. I think we should call it here. We're at an hour and 40 minutes. This is the longest one so far. So 10th one.
I got to see the Rangers score is tonight. I have to see the Rangers. I have to see what the Rangers score is tonight.
Yeah.
Towards the end here. Gosh, a lot of overtime games.
Yeah. Is it in overtime?
No, let me just take a look. Put my glass on here. Look over at the TV. It's 2-1 Florida, and it's late in the third. So it's, but the way it's went the past few games, that doesn't mean we're not going to overtime.
Yeah, I'll probably go to overtime. So, but yeah, all right, yeah, guys, thank you very much. For tuning in, especially the guys and everybody that's men and women, boys and girls that are still here with us now, an hour and 40 minutes later. Yeah, I don't know. This was either the best show or the worst show. We showed up late, stayed way too late. But
got sidetracked a little bit, but
yeah. So, but yeah, guys, thank you very much for hanging out tonight. Again, check out swanhockey.com. We got our community tools, the community Discord, the Scout Central. We'll be right back here next Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, and I will see you guys then. Bill, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on again. Bill was the first repeat guest, so it was yeah, no, it was awesome. Always a pleasure. Yeah, thank you very much, Bill, and everybody. Have a good night. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good night, everybody. Have a good night, Bill.
Hey, people. Hey, guys.